She thought it was just a cleaning job. A mechanic girl, barely 20, hired to sweep out an old, abandoned hangar on the edge of a dying town. But what Willa Hart found beneath the floor was no storage room. It was a secret military tunnel, an underground network, a forgotten airbase, still alive, still moving, still hiding something the world was never meant to see. Before we dive in, tell us where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. The morning air in the outskirts of Ashwick Ridge was thick with fog, the kind that muffled the world and made the trees look like ghosts. You wouldn't find Ashwick on a GPS, not unless you zoomed all the way in and knew where to look. Just farmland, gravel roads, and the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. Willa Hart had her boots on before sunrise, 20 years old, grease on her fingers, raised by an uncle who spoke in engine sounds more than words. She didn't ask for much, just steady work, honest pay, and engines that made sense when the world didn't. That's why she didn't flinch when the township offered her a temporary gig cleaning out an abandoned aircraft hangar on the edge of the old airfield. Locals called it hollowing, said it whined at night, claimed the wind spoke through its busted beams. But Willa didn't believe in ghost stories. She believed in torque ratios and socket wrenches. So with nothing but a dented toolbox, an army surplus flashlight, and a thermos full of stale diner coffee, she stepped across the crumbling tarmac into the shadow of a place time had long since left behind. The hangar let out a low, aching groan when Willa Hart pushed open the heavy rust-streaked door. It echoed through the skeleton of the building like a warning. Her boots hit the cracked concrete floor with a steady rhythm, the only sound in a place swallowed by silence and dust. Light poured through shattered skylights in thin, golden beams, cutting through the air like ghost spotlights. The smell hit her first, not rot, but something older. Oil, damp insulation, a faint whiff of ozone, like lightning had once lived here and never quite left. She pulled her flashlight from her belt and clicked it on. The beam flickered before catching steady, revealing forgotten workbenches, busted crates, and old wing struts half covered with canvas tarps that disintegrated at her touch. Most people would have turned around, but Willa wasn't most people. She set to work sweeping, organizing, cataloging broken tools. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. Each bag she filled, each bolt she tossed into the scrap bin, was another $1 toward her uncle's medication and her own rent. She'd learned young that survival didn't come from wishing, it came from working, and she was good at that. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the occasional clang of metal or a muttered curse when she banged her shin on something unseen. She was clearing out a row of old storage racks near the back wall when her broom clinked against something hard, not metal on metal, but more solid, hollow. She paused, crouched down, brushed aside the decades of dust. And there it was, a hatch, square, flush with the floor, made of thick steel, with worn rivets and a corroded handle that crumbled slightly as she touched it. Her pulse quickened. Willa looked around, as if someone might step out from behind the shadows and tell her to stop. But she was alone. Always had been. She pulled a pry bar from her bag and wedged it into the seam. The metal groaned in protest, but finally with one determined heave the hatch gave way. A gust of cold air hissed upward, carrying with it the scent of sealed earth and something sterile. She leaned over the edge, squinting into the darkness. A metal ladder led down, bolted to the side of a concrete shaft. The rungs disappeared into the black. Willa hesitated, flashlight in one hand, her other resting on the hatch edge. She should have called it in. marked it and walked away, told herself it wasn't her problem. But something about it felt deliberate, hidden, yes, but not forgotten. Like this wasn't just some old maintenance tunnel. It was something more, something waiting. She clipped the flashlight to her wrist strap, slung her bag tighter over her shoulder, and lowered herself onto the ladder. The chill wrapped around her like a second skin. Each step creaked, echoing in the shaft. The deeper she went, the thicker the air became, not foul, but heavy. Still, when her boots finally hit the floor, she found herself standing in a wide tunnel too clean for a place this old, too precise. The walls were concrete, lined with conduit and cable runs, and the floor beneath her was smooth, unmarred by age or decay. This wasn't forgotten infrastructure. It was preserved. Her flashlight swept across the space, revealing stacked containers along the walls. Big ones, all marked the same way, bold. Black lettering against pale gray. Our ops classified equipment. Willa felt her stomach drop. She walked to the nearest crate and wiped away dust with her sleeve. The label beneath read like something out of a movie. Flight Module, T7X Series Auth Code Raven. What the hell was this place? She opened the crate, slow and careful. Inside were parts. Sleek, polished components far too advanced for a hangar that had been shut down since before she was born. Some of it looked like drone gear. Some of it she didn't recognize at all. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out a small panel. It was cold and hummed faintly in her palm. That's when she heard it. A low hum, mechanical, rhythmic. It wasn't her. It was coming from deeper in the tunnel. She killed the flashlight instantly, heart thundering in her ears. The darkness closed in like a held breath. She crouched, listening. And then footsteps. Not hers. Heavy, measured, getting closer. She didn't wait. She shoved the panel back into the crate, slung her bag tighter, and bolted back toward the ladder, her boots slamming the concrete. The hatch above her felt impossibly far, her hands slick with sweat as she scrambled up the rungs. Just before she reached the top, the humming stopped. So did the footsteps. She didn't look down. She slammed the hatch shut behind her, breathing hard, hands shaking. Something was down there, and it wasn't rust or rats or leftover equipment. Someone or something was still using that tunnel, and Willa. She wasn't supposed to find it, but she had, and nothing would ever be the same. Willa didn't go home that night. She drove her rusted pickup straight past the trailer park, past the diner, past the blinking gas station lights, and out to the edge of town, to a gravel turnout, where she could see the entire valley laid out beneath the stars. Engine off, windows down, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping her from unraveling. On the passenger seat sat the one thing she hadn't meant to take, a slim black glove, tactical grade, with a small tag that read, Raven Ops Level 3 Access, and a folded inventory slip she'd tucked into her back pocket without thinking. She hadn't meant to steal anything. She just panicked. And now she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd kicked open a door that was never meant to be opened. She replayed it all in her mind, the crates, the labels, the hum, the footsteps. It hadn't been a dream. Her hands still smelled like old wiring and cold steel. Her legs still ached from the climb. Her heart hadn't stopped racing. She finally made it back to her trailer just past midnight. She didn't turn the lights on. She didn't shower. She just sat on the floor, back against the cabinets, and stared at the glove like it might start glowing. And that's when her phone buzzed. 3:02 a.m. No contact name, no number, just a text. You weren't supposed to go down there. Willa's blood turned to ice. She stood up so fast she knocked over her coffee mug, her hands trembling as she stared at the message. She didn't know whether to throw the phone out the window or call anyone, but deep down, she knew. They knew. She deleted the message, powered the phone off, yanked the battery out just to be sure. But even then, the silence around her felt watched. The next morning, something about Ashwick Ridge felt different. The clouds were lower, the people quieter. At the corner store, the clerk barely made eye contact. At the garage, her boss avoided her entirely. And when she went back to the hangar needing to prove she hadn't lost her mind, it was no longer hers to enter. A new lock hung on the door, industrial grade, fresh, cold, and just above it, a clean metal sign bolted into the frame. Property of North Raven Logistics, restricted access. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Her stomach dropped. She took a step back and scanned the lot. Across the road, a black SUV idled behind tinted windows. The engine was running. She could see the heat shimmer rising from the hood. The SUV didn't move. Until she did. As she turned and walked away, it pulled forward, slowly, pacing her, like a shadow with tires. That night, she called the only person she could trust. Elias Kane, her uncle's best friend, retired Air Force, worked in communications and radar back in the 90s, now lived in a cluttered shack filled with ham radios and dusty equipment out by the train tracks. He opened the door before she even knocked. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said softly. They sat in his back room, the only light coming from an old desk lamp and the blinking green screen of a radar monitor he never shut off. Willa laid it all out the hatch, the tunnel, the crates, the hum, the glove, the text. Elias listened with a face carved from stone. Then he stood up and pulled a box from the shelf, old, rusted, labeled OP, Blackwing, inactive. He slid out a stack of files, yellowed and brittle. Back in '94, there was a classified build under Ashwick. He said, no public records, no debrief. It was a ghost operation. Called it Sub-Level Echo. Said it was decommissioned after a fuel explosion. He looked up at her. "But you found it, which means it was never shut down. Just renamed." Willa blinked. North Raven. Elias nodded grimly. "They've gone private. Black budget contracts, aviation, weapons transport, deep storage, experimental systems. And if they're guarding it now, someone up top is scared." Willa leaned back, the weight of it crashing down. "I'm just a mechanic." "No," Elias said. "You're a witness." Suddenly, every light in the shack cut out. The radios died. The hum of the scanner faded into silence. And outside, 2 pairs of headlights flicked on. No horns, no sirens, just presence. Elias moved fast, grabbing a signal jammer and his emergency kit. "They're not here to scare you," he said. "They're here to erase you." He pulled Willa through the back door, into the brush behind the shed. They moved fast and low through the dry field behind the tracks. Willa dared one glance back. A man stepped out of the SUV. All black. No face, just mirrored glasses reflecting the full moon. Whoever they were, this wasn't about stopping her. It was about burying everything she knew. And her with it. They spent the night hiding beneath an abandoned grain silo 2 miles out from Elias's shack, crouched low in a crawl space that smelled of dry corn and rusted metal. Willa's muscles ached from tension, but her mind wouldn't let her rest. Sleep came in gasps, in jerks, in pieces. Above them, trucks rolled by slowly on the gravel road, like predators sniffing the wind. Elias didn't speak for hours. He just adjusted the dials on an old radio scanner and listened to static. When he finally did say something, it wasn't a warning. It was a truth. "You're not some girl who found the wrong door. Willa," he whispered, "you're a liability. To people who don't make mistakes." Willa hugged her knees to her chest. "I didn't ask for this." "No one does." She turned toward him, her voice a mix of fear and fury. "Why me? Why would they care so much about a girl who fixes tractors and drinks gas station coffee?" Elias looked at her like he was seeing something beyond the grime on her jacket and the calluses on her hands, like he saw a blueprint she didn't even know she carried. "Because you saw it," he said, "and you weren't supposed to. Because you climbed down there with nothing but a flashlight and nerve. That makes you unpredictable. That makes you dangerous." Willa didn't answer, because deep down, she knew it was true. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back. They stayed in that hole until dawn. The sun bled through the gaps in the silo wall, and finally, the sounds outside faded. Elias emerged first, checked the perimeter, then waved her up. Back in town, everything looked the same, but Willa saw it differently now. Every parked car felt like surveillance. Every stare from a stranger felt a little too long. The air was heavier, the sky more silent. This wasn't her town anymore. It was a stage, and someone was watching. That afternoon, Elias returned from a trip to an old storage unit he hadn't touched in years. In his hands was a weathered case filled with classified documents and faded photos, surveillance images, flight logs, blueprints. One caught Willa's eye immediately. A blueprint marked North Raven sub-level grid, Sector 3A. And in the center, in bold red, was the shape of the airbase hangar she had cleaned. There were tunnels branching out beneath it. Not one, not two, but a full network. "They're not just storing things down there," Elias said. "They're moving them. Shipping routes, flight paths, global grid lines. Someone's building a ghost armory under our feet." Willa stared at the blueprint. Her breath slowed. This wasn't just a hidden bunker. It was an active operation. And no one, not the town, not the news, not the government, was talking about it. She rose to her feet and stepped outside, the wind catching her hair as she looked back at the horizon. The hangar stood somewhere beyond that hill. Quiet. Still. But it wasn't asleep. She turned to Elias. "I'm going back." He didn't argue. "I figured you would," he said, handing her a USB drive and a modified GoPro with thermal vision. "If you're going in smart, get proof, get faces, and get out fast." She nodded, jaw tight. "I'm done running." By nightfall, Willa had mapped her route. The plan was simple: sneak back into the hangar, slip through the hatch, go deeper than before, and capture evidence, real evidence, not rumors, not whispers, but footage that would scream the truth into the world's ears. But when she and Elias stepped into the tunnel hours later, Willa knew instantly they'd lost the element of surprise. The tunnel lights were already on. The hum she'd heard before, louder now, vibrating beneath her boots like a low heartbeat. The air smelled charged like copper and static. They moved quickly, hugging the walls, communicating only in looks and nods. At a fork in the tunnel, one Willa hadn't noticed before a soft red glow pulsed from behind a half-closed door. She pushed it open slowly. What she saw stopped her heart. A chamber. Massive. Reinforced. Filled with racks of advanced gear, and at its center, a circular interface glowing like something out of science fiction. Digital panels flickered, displaying code she couldn't read. Mechanical arms moved crates without human touch. A drone hovered silently in the corner, tracking motion. This wasn't a warehouse. It was an automated base, and it was alive. Willa raised her camera, recording every second. Elias snapped photos, fast and steady. Then behind them a sound. Footsteps. Not one pair, several. Willa didn't look. Elias didn't hesitate. Go. They bolted down the tunnel, camera still rolling. The hum of boots chasing them echoed like thunder. They reached the ladder. Willa climbed first, lungs burning, Elias right behind her. She threw the hatch open, daylight slashing through the dark. They made it out, but something had changed in Willa. She no longer felt like a girl who stumbled into a secret. She felt like the only person brave enough to expose it. By the next morning, Willa Hart wasn't hiding anymore. She sat at Elias's workbench, face lit only by the flickering glow of his ancient laptop. The footage from the night before looped again and again on the screen. Shaky. Dim, but real. The glowing interface, the robotic crate lifts, the words North Raven Logistics, Sector 7A, burned into digital displays. And in the background, distorted by distance but unmistakable, a voice. Subsector grid confirms transfer. Code green for deployment. That was it. Confirmation. Not a theory. Not a dream. A voice caught on tape, admitting everything. Elias leaned in. You've got him. Time, date, coordinates, audio. But we can't take this to the local paper. Sheriff's got half his budget tied up with North Raven maintenance contracts. Willa didn't even blink. Then we go bigger. She reached into her duffel and pulled out the black glove, the inventory slip, and a crumpled name scribbled on a diner receipt. K.M. Channel 7 Fire. Her name's Kayla Monroe. Willa said, independent journalist. She took down a pipeline project last year with nothing but a drone and a GoPro. She doesn't scare easy. Elias nodded slowly. I've heard of her. She's fire on legs. You think she'll believe you? Willa didn't hesitate. She doesn't have to. I've got proof. They reached out to Kayla through an encrypted forum Elias used to share intel with other retired military techs. The response came quicker than either expected. Just 4 hours later, Kayla messaged back. This the Hangar story I've been chasing since '99. Send me a location. 3 days after that, a dusty red Subaru rumbled down Elias's dirt road. Kayla stepped out wearing hiking boots, a windbreaker, and mirrored sunglasses. Her hair was in a messy braid. She carried a camera rig worth more than Willa's truck. I came for a good story, Kayla said, her tone calm but sharp. Don't waste my time. Willa handed her the flash drive. 2 minutes into the footage, Kayla's jaw clenched. By the 5-minute mark, she was already loading her gear into a backpack. They returned to the hangar that night. Willa, Elias, and Kayla. Silent shadows against the moonlit fields. The gate had a new padlock, but Elias bypassed it like snapping a twig. The hatch creaked open with a familiar groan, and for a brief moment, Willa froze at the edge, not from fear, but from memory. That first descent, that first step into the dark. She wasn't that girl anymore. They moved quickly through the tunnel. Kayla filmed everything wide shots, close-ups, whispered commentary. Willa and Elias worked in tandem, checking hallways and marking silent alarms Elias had rigged to detect movement. But this time, Willa noticed something new. More crates, bigger ones, some marked not with North Raven tags, but with black labels that read, Unregistered Assets, for internal use only. She opened one. Inside not weapons, not tools, blueprints, schematics, folded diagrams of engine cores, drone stabilization software, and something that looked dangerously like remote targeting systems tied to GPS grids. Kayla's voice cut through the silence, low and urgent. This isn't just storage, it's distribution, black market level, Someone's funding a private operation under a civilian name. Elias flipped through a folder. Or worse, someone in the system is using this. They're not just moving tech. They're building something. Kayla looked at Willa, eyes sharp. You realize what you just walked into? Willa nodded, calm despite the storm in her chest. Yeah, a war they didn't want anyone to see. They made it out before dawn. By midnight, Kayla had edited a 3-minute teaser. Grainy footage, spliced interviews, a voiceover that burned like wildfire. Hidden beneath a forgotten hangar in rural Ashwick Ridge, a secret network of unregistered tech, stamped, sealed, and very, very active. She titled the video, "The Airbase They Never Closed." It went viral in less than 12 hours. By the end of the week, national outlets were calling. Hashtags trended. Whistleblower networks reached out offering support. A congressional subcommittee requested the raw footage. And then the envelope arrived. No sender, no return address, just thick paper. A white-gloved courier handed it directly to Elias. Inside, a check, 7 figures, and one typed line. Name your silence. Willa stared at the paper, at the zeros, at the future it promised no more grease under her nails, no more worrying about rent, her uncle's meds, broken trucks, or cold winters. She could vanish, start fresh, be safe. But safety had a price. She thought of the girl she used to be, the one who climbed down a hatch just trying to earn a paycheck, the one who thought no one like her could shake the world. She took the check to Elias's kitchen sink, lit a match, watched it curl into ash. I don't want silence, she whispered. I want the truth to echo. The video had been online for 4 days. 4 million views. And still, Willa Hart couldn't sleep. Not because she was scared anymore, but because everything she had known about the world had shifted beneath her feet. And rest was a luxury she didn't feel she deserved. She spent her nights on the floor of Elias's spare room, surrounded by USB drives, printed schematics, and hand-scrawled timelines taped to the walls. The space looked more like a war room than a workshop. But this was a war now. Only it wasn't fought with bullets. It was fought with proof and perseverance. Still, that didn't stop the fear from creeping in at night. Once, she heard a drone hovering just outside the window, slow, deliberate. Another time, a white sedan parked 3 houses down, idling with no lights on for nearly an hour. She wasn't naive. She knew the video didn't just draw allies, it drew enemies. But something had changed inside her. That girl who used to fix engines to escape the noise. Now she made noise, on purpose. People started reaching out. Veterans from other states who had seen things but were too afraid to speak. Single mothers who thanked her for being brave when no one else would. Teen girls who sent photos of themselves holding tools, covered in grease, with signs that read, Willa made me believe I could fight back. And then one envelope changed everything. No threats this time, no checks, just a letter. Inside a photograph. Her mother. Younger, smiling, dressed in a uniform with a patch Willa didn't recognize, but with the words North Raven Engineering Division stitched across the sleeve. And on the back a handwritten message. She was one of us. She tried to expose it too. They made sure she didn't get the chance. Willa didn't cry when she first read it. She just sat there, silent, the paper trembling in her hand. Her mother hadn't left her. Her mother had been silenced, just like they were trying to silence her. The grief hit later, alone in the garage, oil on her hands and tears burning down her cheeks like gasoline through rust. She didn't tell Elias right away. She couldn't, not yet, because once you say it out loud, it becomes real. Instead, she built. She took everything she had, every clip, every photo, every timestamp, every leaked invoice, and started piecing it into a full narrative, a living record, something that could survive her, if it had to. Kayla helped her build an interactive database, a digital map of the tunnels, a breakdown of every asset, every crate ID, every official signature forged under dummy corporations. And then Willa did something she hadn't done in years. She fixed the generator at the old community center, the one that had been out since the storm 2 years ago. No one had asked her to. No one expected her to show up. But she brought her tools, got on her knees, and rebuilt it from the ground up. The next night, the building was full of light for the first time in over 700 days. People gathered. They didn't come to praise her. They came to join her. A week later, Kayla handed Willa a sealed envelope. Government seal, State Environmental and Infrastructure Committee. Inside a request to testify. Willa stared at the page for what felt like an hour. "I'm not a politician," she whispered. "I'm just a girl who used to fix carburetors." Kayla leaned in, voice steady. "That's exactly why they need to hear you." The night before the hearing, Willa and Elias sat beneath the busted neon sign at the edge of the old hangar. No cameras, no reporters, just the sound of wind moving through the weeds and the quiet hum of a story that had outgrown its origin. "I used to think this place was haunted," Willa said, staring up at the rusted beams. Elias chuckled softly. "It is, just not by ghosts." She turned to him. "Do you think she ever came here?" "My mom." He didn't answer right away, just placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. "She might have been the first one who saw it all, and now you're the one finishing what she started." Willa swallowed the lump in her throat. "Then I'll make sure her voice is heard." She didn't sleep that night either. But for the first time in a long time, it wasn't because of fear. It was because tomorrow, the world would hear everything. The state building was too clean. Polished floors, marble columns, everything built to make people feel small. Willa Hart stood in the hallway, her calloused hands clenched around a single sheet of paper bullet points. Nothing more. Names, dates, places, just the truth, written not in perfect grammar, but in grease-stained clarity. She wore her mechanic's jacket torn at the elbow, stained at the cuffs and boots that still carried dust from the tunnels below Hollow Wing. She hadn't dressed up. She didn't want to. Because this version of her, the real one, that's who the world needed to hear. A young staffer opened the chamber door. "Miss Hart." "They're ready." She stepped inside. The room was a horseshoe of suits and power ties. 12 officials sat behind a long desk. Reporters lined the back wall. Cameras pointed from every angle. 1,000 blinking red lights watching her every move. But Willa didn't flinch. She sat down, adjusted the microphone, took one long breath, and began. "My name is Willa Hart. I'm a mechanic from Ashwick Ridge. A month ago, I took a job cleaning out a decommissioned hangar. But I didn't just find dust or old bolts. I found a hidden tunnel. I found military-grade crates, weapons, technology that didn't belong there. I found systems still running, still alive. And then I found silence. Not from the place, but from the people who knew, who signed the contracts, who kept it quiet." She held up the black glove. The photograph of her mother. A printed page from a shipping manifest marked "Unregistered." Her voice cracked only once. When she said, "My mom tried to stop this years ago. I didn't even know. They made sure I never did." But she didn't stop. She told them about the footsteps in the tunnel, the drone outside her window, the SUV that watched her walk home, the 7-figure check and how she burned it. And when she finished, the room wasn't quiet because it didn't believe her. It was quiet because it did. She didn't stay for questions, didn't pose for the cameras. She slipped out the side door, her boots clicking against the marble like a thunder she left behind. Outside, the sky was soft with spring, the kind of blue that makes even hard stories feel possible again. Across the street, a crowd had gathered, kids holding handmade signs. Some waved tools in the air. One sign read, "I'm not afraid because Willa wasn't." She smiled, blinked hard, and waved once, not like a hero, but like someone finally seen. The weeks that followed were a storm. Investigations opened. Subpoenas issued. Federal agents raided a North Raven facility in Kansas. One project manager cracked and gave them everything the fake shell companies, the diverted shipments, the buried programs in towns just like Ashwick. It was bigger than anyone imagined. But Willa didn't chase headlines. She let the truth speak for itself and turned her hands back to something she understood. Rebuilding. 3 months later, she stood at the edge of the old airfield. The Hangar hollow wing was sealed now, fenced off with federal warnings and hazmat tape. Inside, investigators still worked, still cataloged, still peeled back layers of a secret buried in concrete and shame. But Willa wasn't looking at the hangar. She was looking at the land across from it, a gravel lot half swallowed by weeds. In her hand, the deed. She bought it. With every cent she had. With help from people she'd never met. Donations from strangers who said, "You helped me believe again." Elias stood beside her, watching the wind move through the grass. "What are you going to do with it?" he asked. She looked down at her hands. The ones that had once fixed tractors in silence. The ones that had climbed into a tunnel and refused to run. The ones that had uncovered the truth and refused to sell it. "I'm going to build a garage," she said. "Not just for repairs, for learning, for girls like me, for anyone who's ever been told they're too quiet, too small, too ordinary." Elias smiled softly. "A garage that tells the truth." She nodded. Exactly that. The first day it opened, they had no fancy ribbon. Just a single sign. Hearts for those who don't stay silent. And on the wall inside, above a workbench, framed in glass, the photograph of her mother. Grease on her cheek, strength in her eyes. And next to it a quote Willa had etched into the metal with her own hand. "Truth doesn't whisper, it roars." Willa Hart didn't start out wanting to change the world. She just wanted to survive it. But in doing so with a flashlight, a stubborn heart, and hands that refused to stay idle, she uncovered something meant to stay buried. And instead of turning away, she stood up. She spoke out. And because of that, the silence is broken. The truth is out. And the next girl who picks up a wrench will know. She's not alone. Sometimes, the most powerful voices don't come from podiums or press rooms. They come from dusty garages, from girls who were never handed a microphone, but picked up a wrench instead. And that's the lesson. You don't need to be loud to be brave. You don't need to be rich to make a difference. You just need to decide that truth is worth more than comfort. Willa reminded us it's not about being unafraid. It's about being unwilling to be silent. Because for Willa and those who come after, truth was never a risk. It was a responsibility. And now, the silence was broken for good. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories of ordinary people uncovering extraordinary truths. Click to keep watching and don't forget to subscribe if you believe the world needs more courage like Willa's.